welcome others home. In this particular text that we read, there were Jewish Christians who were struggling with the idea that the Messiah had come not only for them, but for the rest of the world. And we're not so different from them. You see, there's something in you and there's something in me that oftentimes hoards or has the tendency to hoard the blessings that God has bestowed on us. It's called selfishness. And maybe you actually saw that today during Christmas. Maybe one of your children or one of the houses that you were in, you saw a child open up their wonderful gifts from friends and family. And the moment that a sibling or a friend tried to enjoy one of those toys, maybe they uttered the words that I have heard in my own home from my two young daughters. And the words are, "That's mine. That's my toy." You see, there's something in us that can keep the blessings of God just to ourselves, but that's not the love of God. The love of God is in the sharing. I want to encourage you today to strive to share in the love of God with other people by welcoming them to the household of faith. And practically, that can look like just being hospitable to your friends and family, to your neighbors in your home, or by welcoming them to church, or by reaching out to that co-worker or neighbor that God put around you so they can also experience the blessing of being a part of God's family. I love how Romans 15 puts it. Listen to this. "Therefore, welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God." As we celebrate Christmas today, let's remember that Jesus Christ left his heavenly residence and he came down to this earth so that we could be welcomed into the household of faith. Let's rejoice that he welcomes us home into this new family. And let's also remember his challenge to share and to welcome others home as we experience his blessings. Heritage Church, thank you for letting us into your home today. Merry Christmas and God bless you. All of us struggle with people pleasing at some point in our lives. And here we find this pastor. Pastor Peter is compromising his public life. It's different from his private life, right? He's saying, you know what? Now I'm going to eat with the Judaizers and I'm not going to eat with the Gentiles, even though I live like a Gentile. So what does Paul do? Listen to what he does. "When I saw that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter, to Cephas, in a room behind closed doors." Is that what it says? No, right? I want you to think about this for a moment before we finish this verse. These are two men that God used them so that you and I today could read the New Testament, so that we could understand the good news of Jesus Christ. Okay? Two men who gave their lives for God, co-workers and pastors together. So think about the drama of this moment. He says to Cephas, in front of them all, "You're a Jew, and yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs?" Exposed, right? Paul, he decided, you know what? I'm going to tell Peter in front of everyone because he's leading people astray. Can you imagine the kind of emotion that Peter felt in that moment? These two men who were probably really close, suddenly Paul is calling him out. You know, one of the biggest fears of those that struggle with people pleasing is being exposed. They're going to find me out. They have this image of me, and now I feel like I have to keep it right? And I'm not as talented as they think they are. Or I'm not as Christian or holy as they think I am. And the moment they find out about my past, I don't know if they're going to accept me. I don't know if they will approve of me. You see, when people are big, our public life is different from our private life. Why are you going to expect it? Well, listen to what Jesus says. In verse 18, once again, he says, if the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. Just a couple of verses later, as we'll read, Jesus will say, they're going to do these things on account of my name. So he's laying down the motivation for the hostility that we're going to experience in the world. And that motivation is not primarily because, your personality and just because you're so weird, right? That motivation is, yes, our behavior matters, but Jesus is pointing to the priority. The main reason why the world will oppose you is because of your association with Christ. See, our association is the reason for the opposition that you and I will experience. It reminded me of a time when, I was growing up and my mom, I used to take my sister and I to school all the time. And on the way to school and on the way back, oftentimes she would have the saying. She would tell us, tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. She would see me hanging out with the wrong crowd, and you know what she would say? Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. In Spanish, it goes like this. Dime con quién andas, y te diré quién eres. Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. You know what she'd say that? Because she understood that people oftentimes make value judgments about who you are based on the people that you associate yourself with. You've experienced this, right? Maybe you have friends or coworkers that maybe you have an acquaintance that you're friends with, but you don't want anybody else to know that they're your friends, right? So you're like, hey man, don't tag me on Facebook, dude. It's cool. Let's keep this on the DL, all right? I don't want anybody fighting. Just between you and I. Because why? We understand that people make judgments about who we are based on our association. Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. Little did I know back then that my mom was encapsulating one of the quintessential theological realities about the Christian life. Who you're with really does determine who you are. If you're a Christian, listen, if you are with Christ, it means that you are in Christ. Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. Are you with Christ today? Jesus then took the loaves, he gave thanks, and he distributed to those who were seated as much as they what? All you can eat. He did the same with the fish. Imagine the power. So Andrew gets this lunchbox from this kid, loaves and bread. And can you imagine the conversation that the disciples are having as he's handing them the fish? I could just imagine them saying, these fish have eyes. These fish have fins that have never swam. The fish have never been caught. They've never been bought or sold. He's literally creating them out of thin air. He's giving them bread, thousands of loaves that have never been wheat. This is the power of our God. That His voice can speak mountains and valleys into existence. That His breath can calm a storm in an instant. And He promises that the same power that conquered the grave can live inside of you. Can live inside of you.